everyone. Welcome to Mentally Fit, the podcast that shares practical strategies and tools to help you prioritize mental fitness. I'm your host, Liv Bowser. Today's guest is Gina DiNapoli. Gina is the creator of the workout JABS that took Equinox and the COVID online workout era by storm. JABS was loved by thousands of women and seen on Good Morning America, The Today Show, and in Health Magazine. Gina was such a popular fitness instructor that her classes booked out a month in advance at midnight because everyone was trying to get into these classes. However, Gina decided to shut down her successful business in pursuit of a happier, more peaceful, and less work-centric life and lives in Italy, in Florence specifically now, teaching workout classes in Italian. Gina is also one of my good friends, and I'm really excited to have her here to share her story and set the record straight. So welcome to the show, my friend.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you so much. Hi, guys.
Gina gave me about one sentence about herself to introduce her, so I had to kind of hype her up myself. And for context, I reached out to you in 2020 or 2021 because I was so inspired by 2020. Yeah, like peak COVID era. I was so inspired by your business and your energy and all the momentum that you had around you. And then we ended up chatting for a while. We met up in LA and realized we had a ton in common. I think we ate acai bowls for like hours. We had an impromptu photo shoot and Liberate t-shirts and just had super honest conversation about life and work and really have been friends ever since. So I'm still inspired by your story, living in Italy and creating a whole life for yourself that's really authentic to you and redefining success. So I'm really excited to talk about all of it. Before we dive in too deep, can you give a little bit of backstory, a little bit of context? Like, what is JABS and why did you decide to start that business?
Yeah. So JABS is a workout format that I created that basically takes the principles of fun and effectiveness and combines them. And the reason that I did that was because I found that in my own personal fitness journey, I found workouts that were effective, but they were not enjoyable and I felt miserable doing them. And then I found workouts that were super fun, but I couldn't get the effectiveness out of them, whether they were just like too high impact and I couldn't do them from like a longevity standpoint, or they were super fun, but they weren't actually hitting the muscles for the proper amount of time to see, changes that I wanted to see. So I said, I'm going to figure this out. Like, I'm going to figure out where that sweet spot is and also what the right amount of cardio versus strength is, because at that time, which now things have shifted, at that time workouts were predominantly either strength focused or cardio focused, but there was surprisingly not a lot of intertwining, which at this point in time, 2024, we're seeing it all the time. But it was kind of a unique thing back when I started that off.
And you built JABS to be super successful. Thousands and thousands of women are going to these classes. Why did you decide to kind of pivot, maybe even a 180 from an outside perspective, and close down the business and start doing something really different, even move to a different country? What happened during that time that made you make that transition?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. Like, where do we even start? So I didn't connect with the industry at large anymore. I feel like the reasons that I started the business were, how do I even say it? Like, it was coming from me wanting to give people what I had gotten out of fitness. It had changed my life and I wanted to give this thing to other people. But the industry, specifically the industry in New York City, it was honestly really competitive and it was very strange to me. Like, fitness instructors were celebritized and I'm somebody who actually benefited from the system and the way that things were, and it never sat right with me. I always thought it was really weird that, I don't know, like, I remember one time being in Sweet Green and I saw someone like taking my picture and it was very obvious. And I'm like, that's so weird. Like, I am literally just like such a normal person. And it felt weird to me the way that fitness instructors were like viewed. And I didn't feel human anymore. I literally didn't feel human. And when I went to Italy, I took a solo trip to Italy after a very long stint of working literally from the second I got up to the second I went to bed. I was like, I deserve a vacation. I went to Italy, and for the first time, I felt human. For the first time in my life at age 28, I felt human. And I stayed in Italy on this solo trip for 3 months. It was supposed to be 1 week, but whatever. We don't have to get into that. Anyhow, I stayed for 3 months. And in that 3 months, I lived more than I had my whole 28 years of life. And I was exposed to this culture and this way of living and this lifestyle that I said, if this thing exists in my lifetime, I'm going to do this, because we're so lucky to exist in 2024. We're lucky to exist now versus, 100 years ago when things were a lot more difficult. And now there are really beautiful freedoms in life. And, there's success strategies to live the way that you want, to live a beautiful life. And I said, if I can live stress-free, and not stress-free because you're never going to get stress-free, but if I can live a peaceful life and a happy life, like that is what I'm going for. I don't want to go for success anymore. I'm done with that hustle and the bustle.
It's interesting because you definitely had the definition of success, at least in America, of, you had $1 million business, you had notoriety, you had almost fame, and we're definitely headed up and to the right in terms of the growth of your own personal brand and your business. It was almost like this viral quality to it. And then you instead of making $1,000 a class, pivoted to now make, you let me know, about 15 to 16 euro a class when you lead a fitness class in Italy now. So what is that like? Does that bother you? Do you still feel successful? Like, talk about your relationship with success in that way.
Yeah. So I obviously took, the pay cut of the century to do this. And I think it's really important to clarify one thing, because I think it could be perceived as like, oh, she just like made all this money and then went to Italy to go live a chill life, and it doesn't really matter how much she's making. No, that's not what happened. I actually invested pretty much everything I made back into the business, and I made so many business mistakes. Like, if this were a business podcast, I would stop right here and take it an entire another direction and teach you everything I did wrong in business. But because it's a mental health podcast, I'm going to focus on the fact that we'll leave it at that. I made some like crazy investments in the business that, I believed in myself too much, to be honest. Like, there is a level of believing in yourself too much and taking too many risks. And I did that. And ultimately, I'm so glad with where I am now in my life. So it's all good. But yeah, I did take a big pay cut, and it's so funny because I am so much better of an instructor, from, down to the class planning, to the cueing, the effectiveness of the workout, the inclusivity of it all, energy level, everything is better now. And I make the smallest fraction of what I used to make teaching. So I do feel more successful now because my classes are better, because I have less people are being impacted by it. But I feel like the impact, I don't even want to say it goes deeper, because I think I was impacting not just me, but I think JABS, the whole, we had a bunch of instructors. I think that JABS was impacting at scale. But if you ask me about how I feel personally in terms of my success, I feel more successful now and more proud of what I'm doing.
And why do you think that is? If you had to kind of distill the success that you feel now, the pride that you feel now from the workout classes that you're programming and that you're leading, what is it about your new lifestyle that feels really successful to you? And I know you and I have had conversations about like America's definition of success versus Italy's, or maybe Europe's in general. Like, how did that influence you?
Yeah. Well, let's just say that success is not a thing in Italy. It's not a word. I just never hear the word used. Like, it's not a word that you would use to describe anybody. It's not a word that you would use to hear a business described. Like, success is just not the goal here. People just want to show up and do the thing that they're good at and offer it to people, and you just feel good about that. Like, you don't need to have some really cool opportunities to back that up and show the world how good you are. Like, you do your job, and then you go home to your family, and you get to see some cool like scenery and mountains and hear cool music playing in the streets on your walk home, and like, life is good. There's not this success pressure that there is in in the US.
It feels like success is just living, just being happy. Would you say that's an accurate statement?
Yeah, yeah. I think that if someone were to use, like an Italian were to use the word success, they'd be like, yeah, I have a successful life. I have a happy family. And they don't mean happy family like, oh,
Wow.
I'm providing all this stuff. Just like people are happy at the end of the day.
Right. Which is definitely exists in the US, but I know
Yes.
for myself as a
Yes.
founder too, like success is often defined for myself and my peers as exiting, making a lot of money, growing a company to a certain scale. Like that is success in your career at least. And that's definitely been prioritized over certain other aspects of life, especially depending on kind of age bracket. Was it an
Yeah.
easy transition for you to go from the US, living that hustle culture, really succeeding and kind of seemingly from the outside thriving in it, to this new perspective on life in Italy? Like, what was that transition like, kind of moving to a new country and almost starting over from a career perspective at 28, 29?
Yeah, honestly, it was so easy because I just relate more to this lifestyle. Like, I did not fit in New York City. That was really not where I was meant to be. Like that surrounding was just I was not well suited for it. And or it was not yeah, I was not well suited for it. And it was honestly easy. Like the life here is so simple. No one asks you about your job, how your job is going, your career. Like it's just not it. And so for me, that transition was easy because I feel like that's in my roots. Like when I came to Italy on my solo trip, I'm like, I must have lived my past life here. Just everything about the culture was something that, I mean, my ancestors, all four of my great grandparents are Italian. So, there's that aspect of it. But also, I mean, I just felt so deeply connected with this that I was so happy to get rid of those pressures because life is short and I don't want to feel my whole life under pressure. Like back in the day, way back in the day, let's say like 100 years ago, nobody was worried about how successful their business was going to be. They were worried about their families, their community. Successful business, that's a newer thing.
It definitely has, I think, developed more and more as we get into this like tech oriented landscape and world too, because there's so many new inventions and there's so much opportunity for innovation. But if without moving to Europe, like let's say
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
couldn't you
That's so
couldn't
true.
move to Italy, or nobody, all your friends are like, Gina, I want to be like you, but like I can't move to Italy because I can't learn Italian, I can't
Right.
leave my family or whatever it is. How can you
Fair.
infuse that like European lifestyle or mindset in just daily life without picking up and moving your entire life? What do you think?
So true. Not needing all of the things. Like I just feel like my cost of living is so low here. And the only thing I spend money on is probably like my skincare, and some clothes. I don't know. I feel like people are buying a lot of stuff in the US and also going on vacations all the time. I think just like move to the city that you're most excited to live in. Like, let's normalize moving to a city for the air of the city and not for work, not for love.
Love that actually, and I've never considered it. I never considered moving somewhere just because it was a pretty place, and I'm actually planning a move to Denver, which is a similar version. It still works with work.
Yes.
My partner and I can work remote, which is why we're able to do it, but we're doing it because we just like that environment. We want to hike and ski and be in that air, which again is difficult to do, but it can just be maybe a mindset around what am I getting from my environment and where am I putting my time when I'm in my environment. I think living in LA, I wanted a nice car because everybody has a nice car. If I lived somewhere where everybody was driving a Prius, I probably wouldn't feel that pressure at all.
Yeah.
How do you avoid giving into some of that pressure? Because I'm sure it exists in Florence. I'm sure there's still temptation around you.
I mean, is it okay to say I'm just so good internally? Like maybe we can
100%.
deep into the mental health aspects here. I think there's a couple of things internally that are just life lessons that I've picked up over time that because I've made them such a part of me, I don't give in to all of the outside pressures. I think number one is that life is so short, so short. And I was lucky enough to get in a very near death car accident when I was 18. I was on the highway and I was the passenger in the car, and the driver went to get off the exit and didn't look over his shoulder, and an 18-wheeler tractor trailer was, I saw it, like when the car started moving to the right lane, I either turned, I did turn around. I turned around and the grills of the 18-wheeler felt like they were in my face. Clearly they weren't, but you know what I mean? They were 10 feet away from me, not 2 inches. But I saw that full speed coming at my face. And we got, booted off the road. It was actually my car that my friend was driving. And the car was totaled. Some of the people had to go to the hospital in the car. And I luckily did not go to the hospital, but I was very badly whiplashed and other things. But I was 1 second away from dying, truly. If we had done that a second later, 100% everybody in the car would have died. And I think being that close with death and being like, my life could have actually ended 18 years ago. Not 18, I was 18. So 13, 12, math, 12 years ago, everything feels like a bonus now. Truly, I feel like I'm on bonus time. And I know not everybody's that fortunate to have an experience like that where you're like, wow, if things went 1 second differently, I would not be here. And so they're not feeling like they're on bonus time. But I think that I've just felt so free after that. And like some people live with those moments and they're like, oh my God, I shouldn't be here. I'm like, I should be here. There is a reason. Like the cops were like, somebody is watching over you, because that was crazy. Like, so yeah, I feel like 1, I'm on bonus time. 2, I realize that nobody is thinking about me, and no one's thinking about you, and no one's thinking about anybody who's watching this. And the way that I know that is there's this girl who, she went to my college, aka our college, because we went to the same college. And she posted on Instagram about her baby. Like she had a baby, and she posted like, this is my baby, whatever people post when they have a child. And I literally liked the post, and I commented like, oh my God, congrats, so happy for you. And then I just scrolled and moved on with my day. And I was thinking about that afterward. I'm like, this person's entire life changed. Like they just did the most beautiful thing that exists on this earth. They just created life. Like that is the most impactful moment of this person's life. And for me, it was a quick 2-second comment, scroll, move on with my day. I couldn't tell you the baby's name. And there are so many other examples I could give of that. Like think about an influencer, or not even influencer, but like a random person that you used to stalk on social media 5 years ago. Do you stalk them anymore? No. If they popped up on your feed today, you would be like, oh, I forgot that that person even existed. It just goes to show that no one is really thinking about us except for our close friends, our family, people who are really relevant in this stage of our life. And it's very freeing to think of that and think of how no one's really thinking about us. And yeah, I mean, I feel like those kind of things make me not feel like I need to succumb to whatever pressures it is. So I focus on myself and the people who are important to me and the people who I know I'm important to and who truly support me. And I feel like even through JABS, I was able to learn who a lot of those people were, because I had everyone on my side until I reached this certain level of success. And as they say, it gets really lonely at the top. I very much experienced that. And you know what? I think that that's actually what makes me a really good guest for this podcast. I've actually always had this belief. I'm like, why do podcasts show all these people with these like superhuman talents? And the people who are listening to these podcasts are normal people. And I feel like I come on here to represent the normal person who just wants happiness in their life. They want to redefine success around less around achievement and more around just internal peace and happiness. And I think I'm a great person to talk about that, as I'm someone who has achieved like being at the top of my game and top of my industry. And I'm like, it sucked there. It sucked. Like, I love being a normal person here. I love that, like, when I teach in my classes that are Gina's workouts, those actually really have picked up from word of mouth, and those are pretty popular. But when I taught in this Italian gym, I used to literally have 8 people in my class, and I low-key loved that. I was like, they have no idea that I was like selling out crazy amounts. Like I just had these like little classes of these like, you know, girls my age. We all loved doing the movement. We had a good time. And I was like, this is awesome. Like I'm back to teaching for the love of teaching. And it felt so good.
I mean, I love everything you said. It sounds like a new value system, or like changing where you get value from, at least for, you know, the last piece you talked about. Like I have, similar to you, gotten some exciting publications or notoriety or recognition, you know, and I wanted Forbes 30 under 30 so badly. I was 29. It was my
And you got
last
it.
chance to get it. I got like, but I got it. But like in my head, I assumed that that would make me a more valuable human being on planet Earth. And it didn't. And really the only people, you know, a lot of people were impressed on Instagram, and I'm still very grateful, and, you know, I really appreciate that recognition, but it didn't change my value to my friends and family. It didn't change my value to my partner. Like they all still see me the same. They love me the same amount. They value me the same amount as they did before I had it, or they would if I didn't get it. And so I was craving this value and validation from society, basically. And then even when I get it, I realize it doesn't actually change that much. And I feel like that's what you've figured out, is you got the value, you got the validation from society at large. And while it comes with a lot of really wonderful things, you recognize that there's a lot more value to be gained from the family, the friends, the authentic connections, the things that like maybe we don't chase as publicly, but they're still really important. And, you know, even if you don't have a near death experience, you can still remember that every day is a gift. I end each podcast by saying that, because nothing is guaranteed and no day is guaranteed. So lucky or not to not have that experience, we still should be grateful for every day. Is gratitude a practice of yours that you do regularly? Do you have practices that you focus on to keep you connected to these mindsets?
Totally. One thing that I do is before I go to bed at night, I tell myself 3 things that I did well that day. And I think that that plays into 2 things. One, gratitude. Instead of sitting in bed and like, oh shit, thinking about all the things I effed up that day, I'm like, what are the 3 things that I did well? And obviously maybe sometimes it does come to mind like something I could have done better, and I can learn from that, but at least I'm training my brain to think positively. So again, I think that that actually plays into gratitude, just for like training my brain to look at the positives. And also it plays into self-confidence, because on a day where I feel like I had this 1 or 2 mess ups, I remember, you know what, I did all of these other things well. And they don't have to be work related things. Like for example, yesterday we went out to eat and I went back to pay and I walked, you know, the extra 2 steps and thanked the chefs, which is something I do pretty regularly. And just the way that they lit up, honestly, it made me sad, because it actually always like pains me a little bit when I do this. And I told you I do this, you know, let's say like 90% of the time I go back and thank the chefs when I go to a restaurant. And it makes me upset, because you can tell I'm the only person who did that, you know, or maybe 1 or 2 other people that night did that. But I will say good job to myself for that. I'm like, you know, good job. You made not yourself, you made these people feel seen. So I think, you know, I look at things holistically in my life when I say good job, Gina, at night. And then the morning, I will say I stopped, but for a while when I really needed it, when I needed to dig into something to like make that life change, you know, you had asked me, how did you go through this crazy life change, just completely restarting your life in Italy? And I did write down every single morning 3 things that I was grateful for. And I wasn't like I was super pumped to do it every day. Like, let's be honest, I wasn't like, oh, let me go get my journal and my pen out. Like, woo, like it was some mornings it was definitely forced, but you could always find things. And I looked actually before we met up today to do this recording, I just scrolled through my pictures and I found some old ones that I did. And I'm like, I'm so grateful that my parents are helping me out with my citizenship process, because this is taking a lot of effort on everybody's parts. This is completely unknown territory. This is not something my parents are like wanting to stop their work days to do. And helping me every single time that I need something, because I was living here while doing that. So they were fetching all the paperwork and stuff. They were going to the town hall and all this, the things that they had to do. And I was like, I'm just so grateful for their help on this. And I think that actually might be a good transition if you want to talk about some things that I manifested, because citizenship was a huge one.
Oh, yeah, we can talk about manifestation. I am a big believer. I've manifested a lot. I've manifested partners, jobs. I manifested Shark Tank. I'm pretty sure that happened
Yeah,
because I was like so locked in.
Curious,
But
if I'm
yeah,
allowed to,
talk about it.
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Or do you not do that? You know what I mean? Like,
No, yeah, you can. I mean, I don't know what you're going to ask, but yeah, ask me.
no, I'm just curious, like manifesting Shark Tank, did you specifically manifest Shark Tank itself? Or were you like, I'm manifesting to be on TV? Like, how specific was it with that one?
When I manifest personally, I'm super specific. So
Mhm.
I manifested specifically Shark Tank, and like every day. I actually manifested Forbes 30 under 32 every single day. I wrote down I am Forbes 30 under 30. Olivia Bowser is Forbes 30 under 30 class of 2024. Olivia Bowser is in the social impact category of Forbes 2024 class. Like I wrote down like 10 variations of the sentence every single day, and I like
Yeah.
would repeat it to myself, because I mean there's a lot of power in like you're not actually going to get anything if you don't believe that you can, if you don't believe that you deserve it, things like that. So I did similar things with Shark Tank, like I am going on Shark Tank, they're going to call me today about Shark Tank, things like that. And then when I manifested partners, I wrote down like super specific lists of what I wanted. I literally said for my
Mhm.
fiance, I literally had written down, I want him to have two sisters and a mom and have good relationships with all three of them. I literally couldn't tell you why, but
Whoa.
he has two sisters and a mom and great relationships with all of them. And so I wrote down this super specific list. It was like 14 things. And my sister said, that's ridiculous. Like, you're not going to get all of those things in a person. And I first of all, I did. And second of all, the whole point of manifestation is that it helps align you with understanding what you really want, because you can't get what you want if you don't know what you want. So
Mhm.
that those are like I think the three biggest ones I've called in, but I definitely do it a lot.
Wow, that's amazing. I don't know if you saw me, but I teared up while you were saying that, because it's so powerful. The power of this thing, it's so powerful. And I'm glad that we're on this topic now, because I have experienced it firsthand. You've experienced it firsthand. I'll get into some of my manifestations in a second, and specifically how I did them. And I just, you know, at least we're 2 for 2 here on people who has been able to bring this kind of stuff to life. So I'll get into it. There were 5 specific things that I manifested. And first, I'll tell you what they are. They all have come true in a 2-year period. And then I will get into exactly how I did it. It was through journaling and a little bit of, no, and visualization. Not a little bit. I was visualizing for sure. So the first one was, I already said it, becoming an Italian citizen. The second one was that I wanted to become fluent in Italian. I will say that's definitely still a work in progress, but it's on its way. And I can speak enough Italian to teach a workout class in Italian. I'm getting there. So that's that. And then I wanted to build a fitness community here, which we'll get into in a second. That's the one that I have the deepest manifestations about and the most specifics that I think are really cool to share and very going to be actionable for other people. I wanted to find the one, and I definitely found someone who was everything I would have manifested and so much more. The last thing was buy my dream house and start to Airbnb it. I've just always been so like, yeah, I've always been so inspired by people who have an Airbnb property. I think it's just the smartest investment ever. And I always knew I was going to do that, but this also manifested itself to be better than I expected. Like my house is so cool, and it's got like the bedroom is pink. It's got these original frescoed Italian ceilings. It's a giant jacuzzi with marble all around it in the bedroom. It's this amazing 1 bedroom apartment that I put on Airbnb, and every single time that a guest comes, I get to experience it for the first time myself, because they walk in there and I like low key do the opposite of catfishing with my pictures. The pictures do not look as good on Airbnb, and like almost every guest says this. They're like, you need to upgrade your pictures. This looks way better in person. And I kind of like to watch them have that moment. I'm a big under promise, over deliver person in general. It just makes my anxiety go down when I do that. So I kind of like keeping things the way that they are, honestly, with the Airbnb pics. But anyhow, every time people walk in the room and they turn the corner into the bedroom, which again, it's pink, it's got these amazing ceilings, this crazy jacuzzi with vanity. It's so beautiful. And I get to experience it for the first time all over again. So it's like I manifested that in a way that was even stronger than I ever could have imagined. But let's get into the fitness stuff. So that was something that I knew I could bring to Florence. When I visited Florence on my solo trip, I didn't even Google to see if there were going to be fitness classes. I just figured there would. Like, it's such an international city. I was like, I'll figure that out when I get there. And I got here and I tried every place. And I could not find anywhere I liked except for the one that I ended up teaching at for my first year here, but that was not in the city center. So I had to take a tram. Like, it was honestly a big pain in the butt to get to. I knew that nobody else would do that except me, because like I'm a fitness instructor and I love that kind of stuff. So that's like my hobby to a degree, to like too much. I would never expect anyone to take a tram to go to this other gym. There was nothing that existed in the city center. Upon having conversations with girls who lived in Italy, I found this kind of heartbreaking piece of information out, which is that the girls there do feel very disempowered. They feel like they have no control over their future. They feel like it's a man's world there, and they don't even dream. It's like they don't even let themselves dream. And I said, I'm going to create a space where girls can dream. And I knew that the only way I could do that was tapping into my powers of the way that my fitness class brings people together, which I knew was possible from obviously from JABS. I'm like, I know that I can create the same space here, because at the end of the day, it's about the community. It's about surrounding yourself with in an environment that makes you feel safe, that makes you feel free, and that makes you know like there's more for you out there. And I can try and pull this up, but I did write this. I wrote this journal entry. Again, before this, I went through my photos to see if I could pull anything up that would be relevant. And I found this old journal entry. It's going to sound kind of cheesy. Okay. Mm-hmm. But it says, my purpose is to use, by the way, this is November 6th, 2021. My purpose is to use my energy and ability to motivate others to build a community and a strong, one-of-a-kind, unique movement experience to enable women to uncover their potential, self-belief, empower women to go after the opportunities of their dreams. And that is 100% what I'm doing now. So many, 2 years later. So I would write that purpose statement and every single day. And then on the next page, I would write a day in my life that is verbatim the exact days that I live in my life now. And again, this was 3 years ago let's say this was 2.5 years ago. And I would write out verbatim days that I'm having now, which were, I wake up, I got a good night's rest. I wake up at 9 o'clock in the morning and I go to my favorite cafe to sip on a smoothie and plan my class. And then I get into and then when it comes time to teach the class, and I'm like, then I show up at the studio and the girls are already there. There's so much energy. We've got the music playing. I'm seeing all these friendships form around me because of the space that I created. Like, everything that is true in my life today, I wrote down when I had not a single customer 2.5 years ago. And a layer beyond that is that I would write down how it made me feel. I would write down, I feel so fulfilled when I see this. I feel secondhand happiness when I see these people who are studying abroad in this foreign country, feeling like this is their second home, feeling that sense of belonging, that this is a space that they know is theirs. And it truly is what people say to me at the end of their semesters. I teach majority of my clients are study abroad students. And this semester I had no less than 5 girls like burst out crying. No, don't cry. Okay. Saying goodbye to me because it was, and they would say to me like verbatim things that I wrote down that I knew I would be able to like create in a space for these future girls who I just hadn't met yet.
There's so much goodness in everything that you just said, from future journaling about the life you want to everything that you've manifested to your purpose statement. First of all, I love that you were doing that with JABS and you've just evolved it. It's not like you stopped, you've been living out your purpose. It just, sometimes the look and feel of that evolves. But what I think is important to clarify about manifestation is, you didn't write down these things and then just sit around and wait. You didn't say that you wanted all these things and then, it magically appeared. Manifestation is really an exercise, especially through journaling, to gain clarity around goals. And then you have to go make it happen. You had to go visit all the gyms. You had to learn Italian to be able to teach it. You created the environment you wanted because you got super clear on what you wanted, on how it would make you feel when you got it. And then that motivated and inspired you to put in the work to do it. And that's the same, whatever category of life you're manifesting in, it does require work. It's not just you write it down and then it comes. But I think the clarity you had around that, it just made you more and more excited. I would imagine you're like future journaling, what your future days are going to look like. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, yes, I want this. I can't wait. Like, let me go out and make it happen. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about, you're like, well, success, not successful. I'm not into hustle and bustle anymore. I just want to, exist in Italy and be happy. And you've also managed to create another successful business in Italy. I mean, success by definition of like people come, I guess, and it makes you happy. You've created another business in Italy. Young girls like to come to your sessions and get a lot of value. You're fulfilling your purpose and mission. It does make money. You created all that on your own. Like, you put in the work to make it happen, and you learned a new language literally and built something from zero. So that to me is still, it's still success. It's still hard work. How do you find the middle ground between being a hard worker, which you clearly are, and being a businesswoman, which you clearly are, but also balancing like the purpose in your work with purpose in living?
Okay. Such a loaded question. I will do my best. Okay. The first thing is I was extremely patient about when it happened. With manifestation, you should set a timeline on things. I did, and I didn't really reach the timelines on some of the things that I wanted to do, but it didn't make me stop. Like, it's good to shoot for the moon. And then when you don't, when you miss, you land amongst the stars. Like, that's kind of what happened. I think what's important here is that every red light turns green at some point in some way. And I was patient while I was at a red light. While I needed to just stop and slow down and reflect, I just found other ways to be productive so that I wasn't operating from like a place of desperation or rushed energy, rushed, anxious, oh my God, I got to do this now energy. And I think that really showed that I was like, when this happens, it's going to be the right timing, and just being able to occupy myself in other ways in the meantime. That's one thing. Two, and I think this is the biggest thing that I do in my life that makes me successful now, is this mindset that I actually learned when I was in technology sales. I had this tech sales job for about 1.5 years, and I had to cold call, aka like literally call on the phone people. And my job, the way I got paid at that job was that I had to book 9 meetings a month for my account executive. So basically I had to call these people, random people who were like the chief information officers or like development. It's like a tech job. I had to call the tech people at other companies and be like, hey, we saw that you like just acquired this new software, and like our software can help integrate that with other software, whatever. That's not important. The important part is that there was a principle that was like shoved down our throats, and it was called being independently wealthy. And it doesn't have to do with money. What it is you are good if they do and you're good if they don't. So you're not on the phone like, please meet with my boss, we have something amazing for you. You're like, we have this thing that a lot of people in your space are using so their businesses operate faster, and we just thought you might want this thing. So basically, this theory of independently wealthy is how I approach every single business opportunity. I think that I go for opportunities that I think are going to be synergistic, that are going to have good synergy. I don't try and waste anyone or my own time. But if someone else doesn't think so, I'm like, all good, you know? And I just feel like that kind of attitude going through life, I mean, it has to come from within. You can't like fake that. But if you mean it, if you're like, I'm good with or I'm good without you, and I feel like this principle also applies to like dating, you know? You're like, you don't need anyone, like you're good on your own. So I think that part of what made this all happen for me was that I didn't push things too hard and the right things ended up coming to me. But that also comes from like being good with myself, which I think I've been able to achieve again through just like the realizations that we talked about earlier, how like life is short. Nobody's thinking about you. Who cares what the societal norms are? I don't feel succumb to those pressures. And just having that self assurance.
You talk about some of your weaknesses being secretly your strengths. What does that mean, and what are your weaknesses and why are they strengths?
Okay, yeah. Well, one I even mentioned earlier, how I had such a challenge hopping on my own fitness game and figuring that out. I had started and stopped my fitness journey 10, 15 times, probably more, over a course of like a 5-year period. And so many people would look at that kind of thing and be like, I just suck at this. And I was like, this is literally my superpower. I know how it feels to be somebody who's starting and stopping and they can't find something they like. I'm like, I am you. Like, I am that person. And so I think that's a big reason why JABS took off. It's a big reason why Gina's workouts in Florence take off, because people are like, wow, I relate to that so much. I went to the gyms here and like, they're just, not the vibe. And so I think because I always relate to my customer so much, there's like that authenticity match that's just there. Another one is that the whole reason I got into fitness, the time that it finally stuck, was because I was going through a pretty bad depression in my first job. Before the tech sales job, I was in real estate, and I was just having like panic attacks that night. Honestly, I remember like taking a shower at 3 a.m. one day and just like crying in the shower because I had 2 roommates. So I had to like do that there. And I just felt so purposeless. I'm like, I know I am in the wrong job. I hate that I just show up to work and like make landlords money who don't even care. They don't even care that they're like giving these tenants a nice space to run their business. Like they're all in it for the money. And I didn't feel good. I didn't feel sound. It didn't match my values. And it just like caused this internal friction that ultimately led me to be like, I'm in the wrong place. I mean, I just felt like so purposeless. It led me into this depression so bad. Like every day after work, I would walk home and just sit in my dark basement because I lived literally in the basement. And my parents said, like, you need to take fish oil pills, you need to go to the gym, and you know what, you fine, you can get a therapist. And I did all those things, and the gym really was that place that got me out of that. And so again, like I used this depression, this weakness that I had as my superpower. I can't be the only one out there who feels so down and so dark, and they find the right community around them that lifts them up and shows them the light. And then maybe the last thing I'll say in terms of weaknesses being strength is that, a lot of people want to know, how did I do it? How did I move to a foreign country where I didn't know anyone? I have no friends or family. I don't know the language. And I'm like, because I'm an introvert. And I think that a lot of people would think the opposite, that extroverts are good in that environment. But I'm someone who does not need social connection. I love it to a degree, but I'm not like I don't go out like whatever. I don't need it. And so I don't thrive off of it. It doesn't energize me. Energizing, like I energize myself by waking up in the morning and like going to a cool place and just taking in the beauty. And so I love being by myself. And I took my introversion and I said, you know what, this is not going to be my weakness moving to a foreign country. This thing's going to be my strength. So it's just reframing.
I think you've definitely mastered the art of a reframe, because a lot of the times we can't change our circumstances, or we can't change the fact that something's going to be difficult. I'm sure that there were difficult moments during
Oh, yeah.
JABS, during the transition to Italy, but your mindset is so solid, so powerful, so positive that you can kind of make the most out of any situation. So my last question on that, and we can wrap up, is what advice do you have for someone who is going through a transition, or who wants to make a big life transition and doesn't know how to start, or is, feeling apprehensive about the whole thing?
Yeah, it's to do it as soon as possible, because nobody ever makes a beautiful life change from feeling like shit. The more that you stay in a shitty situation, you're going to feel worse and worse, and it's going to be even harder to make that change. Like for me with real estate, my parents said that you have to stay until February. You have to. And I one day I just walked in and I just quit, and it was in January. Because I'm like, if I go another day here, I'm going to be so down in the dumps. No one else is ever going to want to hire me. I'm going to just be such a I was such a dud. I was such a shell of myself at that time. And I'm like, I can't. This is gonna negatively impact my future if I continue to operate in this way. So it is to make the change as soon as possible. If you're in a situation that you feel like the more you stay in it, the worse you're feeling.
I think that's good advice. It's harder to dig yourself out of a 6 foot hole than a 2 foot hole. So if you
Yes.
know that it's going to continue, if you feel confident that you're not in the right place, or that it's going in the direction that you don't want it to go in, then having the confidence or the faith to make a leap and make a change. And it can be small changes. Again, we're not here to tell everybody to move to Italy tomorrow, but it can just be some type of positive change that feels like it's moving you in the right direction, because we only have one life, and as Gina says, we got to live it. So thank you so much, Gina, for all of your time, all of your wisdom, sharing your story. Is there anything else you want to get off your chest? Any other tidbits you have to share as we wrap up?
I just want to remind everybody that there are going to be scary moments along the way. And I remember when I got to Italy, after I took a 3-month solo trip, I went back to the US, got a visa. And when I came back, and I had already shut down my business and I was here, my first night here, I took a walk up to my favorite place. It's this place that has a beautiful view of Florence. And it's actually where I teach my private classes now. And I called my best friend and I go, what did I just do? Did I really just shut down this whole business? I had over 1,000 customers still at the time. I'm like, did I really just shut down this whole thing to just assume that I'm going to find people here? Like, you're going to have freak out moments for sure. And you're going to have failures. Like, I originally wanted to open my own fitness studio, and now instead I rent out an art gallery. But I still have the same feelings that I manifested in the journal about how I wanted to feel when girls walked into the room, or how I wanted the girls to feel when they walked in the room. And so let it unfold the way that it's going to, and just know that if you listen to this and you're like, wow, that all sounds really cool, just know I had freakouts, I had failures, I had dreams that came true, and also things that did not come true. And I think it's important that everybody has that reminder.
I agree. I think the fear of failure shouldn't keep you from dreaming, which is full circle for you realizing that, women in Italy need space to dream. We all need more space to dream, whether that's through manifesting, or talking about your dreams with someone you love, or just actually going out and making them happen. You never know, it might just come true. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your energy, your story, your everything with us. I am your biggest fan and supporter always, and I love you. So thank you for coming on. For anyone who wants to learn more about Gina's sessions in Italy, we'll link her info in the show notes. And for everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mentally Fit podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow me on Instagram at Liv Bowser so you don't miss another episode. Until next time, every day is a gift. You got this.